Guys, welcome to another episode of Her Career, Her Way. And Her Career, Her Way is all about inspiring and empowering ambitious individuals in navigating their career in their 20s, which can be definitely chaotic. And as a fellow 20-something-year-old, I definitely have empathy. And so I'm joined today with a really special guest called Urmi Hossain. And she is a third culture kid. She works in corporate finance while also balancing her creative pursuits of being a mentor in women of leadership and just for success in those communities. And she has a really interesting story on how she kind of navigated through parental expectations, finding her power and her values, and how much personal branding means to her as well. And we go into a little bit about visualization too. So I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. I think there's such good key takeaways from her, and she has so much insightful things to say. So let's get into it. Well, thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited for our conversation and just to learn more about your life and everything and your career trajectory. I know that you've had a very interesting one, and I think my listeners will definitely resonate with your story. And I want to hear kind of about your dual worlds of going into corporate finance and then also managing your creative endeavors.
I work in finance. So as I always say, I'm a proud woman in finance, and I've been in the industry for the past, I would say, 10 years already. I do come from a background of finance. And when I studied in finance, it wasn't really my major. It's something that I switched afterwards, and I realized it was love at first sight. So I was never in finance. I was in international business. And then later I decided to switch and have a major in finance because I knew that there was going to be more opportunity. There were going to be more opportunities in the job market. And when I switched, I did the switch. I realized that I really fell in love with finance. I did pursue a lot of designations after I graduated. I completed my CFA program. I also completed the CAIA program, which are two designation in the financial world. And then I've been working in the industry for the past 10 years, and I work in portfolio management. I'm very happy about the things that I do. And I do have a creative side where I do all of these extra things, such as, having a blog, having a podcast, having a YouTube channel, being the co-chair of the organization Women in Leadership. I do think for someone who's working in the corporate world that there is the two things should exist, and I also think that they coexist and they should be seen more like as a complement to one and another, not as two separate things. So this is it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What made you shift from international business into the finance world?
You know what? Yeah, when I was majoring in international business at the beginning, I thought that, if you are running a business or if you're doing things international, you need to have that kind of major. But I realized that it was not giving me any extra knowledge than what I already knew, because I felt like international business is more about reading a lot of stuff and learning more about the cultural differences and being aware of the cultural differences. But it wasn't giving me any added value. And I feel like I was not learning as much. As finance was my minor back in the days. And I was like, you know what? I think I might have a better work opportunity if I switch for something there was more demand. So that's why I switched. But I think when I initially chose international business, I just blindly chose it because I felt like I would resonate with it, but I did not.
Right. I think it's so common for people to honestly switch from what they're learning into something else or something that is adjacent to their major. I mean, you don't have to follow what you choose at 18 years
Mhm.
to do your and things like that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think it's also something very important to be aware of is that you don't have all the answers when you are in your 20s. Like you're probably also trying to figure out what is it that you like. You're probably going to go through changes, especially when it comes from an academic point of view, and that's normal. It's normal because you're not meant to have all the answers at 18 or 20 years old. So I think that's how I approached it is that I'm gonna go with it because I resonate mostly with it. And I think like at 18, I felt like that was what I resonated most with. But then after doing it, after being in the major, I realized that it wasn't made for me.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And how did you start your creative pursuits?
So my creative pursuit, I think it started really I would say probably 5 years ago. I was like, you know what? I just don't want to work. Like, it's not just like, I don't think my life should be just around a title attached to the work that I do. Like, I want to be known for other things as well. I was like, you know what? I want to explore a little bit that creative side and I want to be able to see like how far I can go with it. So it really started with a blog, and I was like, I think I have a lot of information that I can share to the people. And then later on, it developed to other things. I did like collaborations. I was asked to be on podcasts. I decided to start my own YouTube channel. I decided to launch my own podcast, and I also like self-published a book. And I think it was more like a gradual progression because I wasn't quite sure where I was going with any of these things. And I wasn't even sure that I was going to explore that much of my creative side. But I realized that my creative side, maybe it's not helping me to pay any of the bills. Actually, it's not, but it's something that brings me a lot of fulfillment. So I'm okay with that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so hand in hand with your identity and your drive into your career. And I think people always kind of focus on the career aspects of, getting from A to B, getting a promotion, things like that, but they don't actually realize the values and the intention that like inspires your career, honestly. And so I know you talk a little bit about personal branding and how you developed that and maybe advice for 20-year-olds of how one can even build their personal brand.
Yeah, so here's my thing. I think anyone should work on building their personal brand. I think in nowadays, like in today's time, this is very, very essential. And basically, when it comes to personal branding, it's you are the brand. So it's you representing yourself and what you stand for. It's not just about like selling a product, because we think about branding as more like, I'm selling a product, but you are also your own brand, and what you stand for. It's what people see you and how people perceive you. In personal branding, it's the perception that you create around you. It's how people talk about you when you're not with them in a room full of people. And it's important to create personal branding, especially if you work in the corporate job, I think. There is you working for X, Y, and Z, but then there is you as a person. And one thing is that I think is essential, especially when you're changing job, is that you will always have yourself. So personal branding is portable. Like no matter where you go, no matter how many times you change a company, you will always have yourself. You will always have that brand. You will always have your values that you are carrying with yourself. Whereas, let's say you work for a company and then you switch the company and your identity was only connected to that company, then it's quite hard because then you as a person you feel like, okay, I'm not sure who I am as a person. Like you always had this title attached to you, attached to this company, but now you are like let go, you find yourself, in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I am? So I would say like personal branding is portable and it's important to cultivate that. And it simply starts with little exercises where you are like writing down what are the three words that mostly describe you, or what are the three most important values to you. And you have to like think about that, do that reflection type of exercise to figure out how you want to be perceived by people. And then I think it's about like picking up also a hobby. So for instance, there are people that, have podcasts like you, or let's say they are working on a cooking book, and I think these things they add value, especially through recruiters, because nowadays people, when they're looking for people, the resume is not just the only thing they're looking at. And it's also important to highlight some of your accomplishment on your LinkedIn profile, especially if you have outside interests, because I think recruiters want to see that. They want to see a little bit of your personality as well, besides you working for companies. So I think it's very, very important to work on cultivating your personal brand nowadays.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think especially with AI, with the AI CV inflation, and it's becoming less personable sometimes with that aspect. And having those filters and having those values that are so concrete can really help you as a person understand where you're coming from, but also from the employer side. So I was wondering, what are your three values that cultivate your personal brand?
I think it's probably my authenticity. It's probably one of the most important thing for me because I do like to come off as my most authentic self, and I don't like to perform a role. I don't want to be someone else. I just want to be myself. And it's my authenticity is something that I carry no matter where I go. Whether I am at work, whether I'm at home, whether I'm doing my creative stuff, I always make sure that I am showing myself as my most authentic self. And then my other second value is probably persistence. in the things I want to do and the things I want to achieve. And my third value is probably my work ethic. No matter what I do, I make sure that, I put the time, put the hour, I make sure that I get things done.
I think discipline is one of those skills that you have to really practice and show up consistently. I think it's something that's hard. And is there any kind of tips that you have to build onto that discipline?
It is hard, I have to say. For my case, it's something that I was able to work on because of how my parents taught me to be. Like, I do come from, I would say, cultural background, which is very like strict. And even from my early age, like I remember that I was always told to like, make sure that you're studying, make sure that you're getting good grades. And I think it's something that I carried going forward, which is why I'm able to commit to things and I'm able to sit down in things. But one thing that I would say that can work as a good trick is that if you want to work, let's say, on achieving a project, let's say you want to write a book, one thing that I think people should do when it comes to being disciplined is blocking the time on their calendar.
Yes.
I know it sounds like absurd, but I think if you are, writing, like blocking an hour of your day to like sit down and just write a chapter of your book, that's something that is, I would say it's feasible and easy to do if you block that time. Like it forces you to like step away and to focus on that particular activity. And you have to make sure that it's consistent. So it's not that you just book it for one day, but it's something that you have to book like on a regular basis because I think discipline it goes really well with being consistent. So the two go like hand in hand. So I would say like that could be one small tactic that people can use.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely a huge advocate for time blocking. I think it is probably one of the best tools. And it just, you can visually see it as well in your timetable. And so that I feel like is always helpful. And yeah, just definitely consistency over perfection and building those small habits to incrementally like grow and get bigger is always so important.
Yeah, and if I could add, so you mentioned the word habit, and I'm thinking about the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a pretty good book for anyone who wants to, work on themselves, for it's something they want to achieve in 2026. I think it's a very good book to pick up.
Yes, I love that book. Also, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg is very similar to Atomic Habits, and I think they're both just such great reads. So
Yeah,
I definitely love reading those kinds of books.
good.
I kind of want to talk about your upbringing, and you mentioned that you were a third culture kid, and I can definitely relate to that. I would love to know first, for those who don't know what a third culture kid is, I'd love to hear your definition of it, and
Yeah.
how your upbringing in Italy and now living in Canada and how that shaped your life.
Yeah, so I am Italian by birth and Bengali by blood. And the definition of it is basically someone who was born or spent most of their time in a country, a culture that is completely different than their parents' culture. And so in my case is me being born in Italy, being raised in Italy, and both of my parents are Bengali. I would say I had a very interesting upbringing because the time that I was born I was pretty much the only one from the community, from the Bengali community. And like I went to a school that was predominantly Catholic. I had predominantly Italian friends. I did not have anyone that looked like me. I did not have anyone that looked other than Italian, which is also very interesting because back in the days, we only had the first flow of like Bengali people moving from Bangladesh. We did not have that many people from other parts of the world. I always felt like that's not the place it belongs to me. But it's not because anyone made me feel otherwise. It was something that I felt internally because I was quite aware that I did not look like anyone else around me. I did not have blonde hair. I did not have blue eyes. And when I went back home, I also had the same feeling, even though I didn't look like everyone else. But the struggle was that internally, because I had such a mentality that I grew up with, that I also felt like even there I was misplaced. So I always grew up feeling like I was neither this nor that. And it's a feeling that I carried for, I would say, many years until I became, adult. And then when I moved to Canada, even that was a struggle because people would ask me where I was from. And I never knew how to answer that question because I wasn't sure, do I tell them I'm from Italy? Do I tell them I'm from Bangladesh? And no matter what answer I gave, people always questioned it. And that's what bothered me the most because it's not up to anyone to question my identity or to question my origins, but because, I have a probably strong Italian accent when I speak in English. People would doubt it when I would say, oh, I'm from Bangladesh. And if I would say, I'm Italian, then people would doubt it no matter what because I don't look Italian. So there was always something that people did not like in my answer. And I would say after writing my book, I finally came to the conclusion that I don't need to choose any culture. It's about embracing both cultures. And that's why I say I'm Italian by birth and Bengali by blood. I think that definition quite represent me.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think I definitely understand the question of where are you from? I mean, it's so jarring when you're a third culture kid and all you want to do, and it's innate to want to fit into a community. And having that question of just not feeling like you really belong is just really hard to form your identity and when you're younger, is who you are, where you're from. And so I'm sure that that was difficult. And I think as you grow and you become more assured in yourself and confident and realize that these things that feel uncomfortable actually can be your strengths and your competitive advantage, that's when you truly learn to kind of accept who you are and that you
Yeah.
are from different places, that you were raised in Italy, but you are Bengali, and just how amazing that is to have those two aspects.
It's true. It's true. It's something that it took me a while to realize that this is my power and is my strength. But before that, I really used to think that, it was probably my weakness. That's how I saw it. I think I couldn't give a definite answer, but it was only afterwards that I realized now me having, two cultures or having exposure to different cultures is my strength because I can bring different ideas, different perspective, different visions about things. And so I always say, someone who's multicultural speaks more than one or two languages. It's more than two cuisines. Like there's so many different things that we have that I think make us quite rich in that sense.
And also, when you have those multicultural perspectives, you're able to have a broader mindset. And
Yeah.
I think you also can understand people better, having that emotional intelligence as well, which I think is so important. I think it's one of those skills that you are just constantly having to grow and develop.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what kind of aspects of that emotional intelligence do you kind of resonate with the most, or that you want to tell like 20-year-olds to focus on or grow and develop?
So I think one thing that you need to be aware is that you have to be really open-minded and you have to be really curious about things. You have to have a genuine level of curiosity, a genuine interest when you are getting to know different things or approaching different things, even when you are being a leader. Um, because there's so much diversity around you. There are so many differences, and it's important to develop that, I would say, especially because we have people coming from different cultures, people, having speaking different languages, people having different way of using their body to communicate a message, different ways of speaking. And I think as a leader who is building on their emotional intelligence, I think it's important to be respectful, being open-minded, and staying curious about the other person.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of those things, and I learned it, just I grew up in Singapore, and so that was amazing. And just seeing each culture's different approaches to time, I think is so interesting. In one of my Chinese business classes, one of the things that we learned was when to show up to a meeting. You show up early,
Mhm.
but in another culture, you show up late. And just even like knowing ahead who you're meeting with, where they're from, what's the tradition in their culture, and having that understanding and appreciation. And I think that shows for them that they actually understand what is the aspect in this industry or whatever, and being so intentional with that.
Yeah, definitely, especially if you're like doing business with someone who is not from your same cultural background. I think it's important to make that effort to get to know the other person because, if you are not making that effort, some of the, partnership or business relationship can really fail. And it's about showing respect and getting to know the other person.
I kind of want to go back towards your upbringing. And you mentioned briefly about like parental expectations and being really disciplined, and that's how you were innately brought up. I read about your desires and how there's a gap between your parental expectations and what you wanted, and how you kind of navigated that. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with just differing expectations for them.
Yeah, I would say the South Asian culture is very much focused on rigidity, and it's very much focused on excellence and perfectionism. I think that's something that for sure my parents expected of me to be the typical Bengali girl, obedient, following the orders or the instruction from her parents, and making sure that you are excellent from an academic point of view. And reputation is everything in the South Asian culture. What people think of you and how people perceive you, it's so important. So if you do one small mistake, like that could be, I would say, detrimental to the reputation if you don't, match that expectations. And I think for me, it's something that I really related. I mean, it's something that I realized later on in life, where I was like, I'm doing things to make other people happy, but I'm not doing things to make myself happy. In South Asian culture, they don't teach you about putting yourself first. They don't teach you about boundaries, everyone, and people pleasing everyone. And I realized that that's not something that I want to do, because you cannot, pour from an empty cup. You cannot be responsible for people's emotions or people's feelings. And that's when I realized that now I want to pursue things that I like, and I want to be leading my life the way I want to. Letting go of the expectations, because it's never enough. No matter
Yeah,
what you do, it's never enough. And I think there's so much pressure from parents to make sure, your kids are raised in a certain way, but you cannot even blame them, because that's the only way they see things. It's about making a compromise, and sometimes it's about having an open discussion about it and communicating about this, even though it's something that sometimes some parents do not get. So it's really up to you to make that decision at the end of the day of how you wanna live your life and lead your life.
absolutely. And I think there can be a little bit of the pressure of kind of feeling selfish for choosing what you want and going against your parents' expectations. But I think you also mentioned about how important it is that you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you're doing it for someone else, you're going to run out of that fuel because you're not coming from a place of intention. And you have a little toolkit, the three P's of passion, purpose, and power. And I'd love to kind of just how you came up with it. What are your passion, purpose, and power, and how to identify it?
Yeah, the three P's, it's something that I came up with. I would say, like, I don't think I've read it anywhere, but I think purpose, passion, and power, they're pretty much interconnected. And I read about this concept called the ikigai. I don't know if you're familiar with this Japanese concept, which means your reason for being. And it was a very interesting book, because it talks about how you can have a sustainable, fulfilled life on a long run. And it is simply about, finding your ikigai, which is basically a combination of different things, how you can like serve other people, how you can, find fulfillment in your things, how it's about finding what you're good at. And that book really, really helped me to get an answer, especially because I was doing a lot of these things, but I wasn't quite sure that I was following my ikigai. And I would say that when it comes to passion, it's really about doing things that really fuel you, doing things that really rejuvenate you, re-energize you, doing things that really make you happy, where you're like working on something and you're not aware anymore of like what time is it. I think when you have a passion, you are able to find a meaning to your life. You're able to see, what is it that I want to do on the long run? What legacy do I want to leave? How do I want to be remembered? And that's your purpose in life, which goes back to your why. Like you will never be tired of doing something, because this is how you want to be remembered. You know how you want to influence and inspire other people. And which is connected to the word power, because I think that when you're able to find your passions and work on them and find your purpose, this will be your strength. It's something that will define you. It's how people will perceive you, and it will be your power. And which goes back to the concept of personal branding, which is another P again. So and this is how I was able to come up with that definition on my own. It's a theory that I come up with. I don't know if it actually exists, but I do think that it makes sense. And I did it by really reading books and trying different things in life and finding out what is it that really makes me happy.
For those listening, just kind of give me a brief overview of what your passion, purpose, and power is.
I think one of the things that I very much enjoy is mentoring. I do very much enjoy mentoring like women, especially because I did not have a mentor growing up. I do this through volunteering work. And that's probably one of my biggest passion, really helping other people, which helped me to realize what my purpose is, which is to really empower other women through my knowledge. And by sharing the things that I know, by guiding them, I do believe that it, when you are helping one person, that person will help another person, so you're creating a domino effect where you're literally like helping one and another, and at the end of the day you realize that you help so many people. And I do think that it is one of my biggest strengths to mentor other people, because I've been doing it for the past, I think, 5 years. I mentor so many women, and I do feel like I do have personal experiences and resources that I can share with other people, because I feel I'm so connected with the things that I do. I do enjoy the connections that I'm making with the women, and getting to know them. So it brings me a lot of happiness, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think having a mentor is not only so inspiring, but it makes you feel validated in a way too. And I think having a mentor is just so important to your development as a person and to your career in general. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah, definitely.
that it's really valuable and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to talk about is your visualization. I know you talk a lot about the subconscious mind and also vision boards. And I think a common misconception with vision boarding and manifesting is that it feels so like intangible. And how do you really bring those elements into reality?
So I think visualization can be tangible if you do a vision board or if you write things down. And it's very easy to do. Like there are organizations or social groups out there that they do like vision board night where everyone get together and they're like cutting newspaper and gluing the pictures on their vision board. But you can simply do it on Canva as well. So you can just think about some ideas or things that you want to work on. So for instance, I don't know, let's say you want to start playing an instrument, then you can put the violin. So there are research saying that when you have a vision board, chances are that you are most likely achieving them because your mind is subconsciously working towards that. And often we don't realize it, because there were times where I would create my vision board and then I would look at it the year after, and then I would see, oh my gosh, I did accomplish all of these things. And typically when I do have like a vision board or I'm doing like a goal setting exercises, like I'm writing down things, again, my mind like somehow knows it and I'm like really working towards that. I would recommend anyone to do a vision board.
Yeah, and it's exciting too,
Mm-hmm.
and just to let go of all the steps on how to do it and just focus on like what you want. With the vision board, I was just wondering, do you elect every week or every month on the vision board after you create it, or do you just kind of let it go?
So here's the thing, there are two ways to do it. I have a physical vision board that I do have on my desktop. Like actually I have it behind my desktop
Mhm.
and I basically see it every single day. And some people suggest to like print your vision board and put it somewhere that you can see it on a regular basis as a reminder of the things you want to do. However, back in the days, what I used to do is that I would create a vision board on Canva and then I would not look at it at all. I would just not look at it at all, but I would look at it at the end of the year and then see what I did. And then I would realize that, oh, I created it a year ago, but I did accomplish the things that I put down. I think the best way to use a vision board is to actually have a physical copy of it and to put it somewhere that you can look at it on a regular basis. You need that as a reminder of the things that you have put down and the things you want to achieve in the upcoming years.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. To kind of, I guess, remind yourself and have those visual cues that
Yeah.
what you want to accomplish. One more thing is that I feel that especially in our 20s and for those just starting out, we might have these dreams and goals that we want to achieve, but there's a gap between that and where we are now that we haven't achieved that. And I was wondering, is there any advice or I guess reassurance that you can give to being at peace in that progress?
Yes, I would say that the person that you are in your 20s will be completely different to who you're gonna be in a couple of years. Like I'm a woman in my 30s, so I can see that I'm a completely different person. But I can definitely see that in my 20s, I was quite reserved. I was not out there. But it's okay. It's okay to be like that because in your 20s, you're not supposed to have everything figured out. And it's important that you have this sentence in your mind that you don't need to have all the answers. Because as I like to say, everything that you do in your 20s it will probably come with mistakes and you'll probably learn through the mistakes and experiences, but they will be like lesson learned. And I always say, like, if there are things that you want to try in your 20s, just go ahead and do it. It's part of the process, it's part of the journey. Like me choosing international business and realizing that it wasn't really made for me. And then later on, realizing in closer to my 30s that I wanted to explore all these creative things. I think you're going to have a calling at some point in your life, but it's okay. Everything has its time. Everything is meant to happen at a certain moment in your life. But I would say explore things. Always go and try different things. Don't say no to things. Say yes to opportunities even when you're not ready. Do a project if you feel like it resonates with you, like take advantage of the time that you have now and think of the present without worrying too much and stressing too much about the future. Your answers to the future will come based on the decisions that you make today. And that's okay. Because then in the future, you will reflect upon your time and be like, okay, I needed all of these things because this is what they brought me today. And they say patience is a virtue. So really be patient with yourself and the things that you're working on.
I think that's really, really beautifully said, that patience is definitely a virtue and that we should remain curious and open-minded, like you said, throughout this whole podcast. And that's how we can kind of find ourselves and our paths and continually grow. I guess one closing question is, what's one thing in your life that you've recently audited? It can be a mindset, habit, or belief, or anything like that.
So I think one thing that I'm working on is doing things with much more intention. And it's something that I told myself in the month of December that no matter what I do in the month, like in the upcoming years, that I will do things intentionally. And it's more about my genuine intention. And it's not about like achieving a goal or accomplishing it. It's just having an interest at heart when you want to do something. And one of the things that I'm working on is that I really want to spend less time on my phone, for instance, especially like I think when we wake up, we just have a habit of like looking at our phone. But now I'm taking a habit that I'm not going to look at it. So it's something that I really intentionally need to work on, and also to make sure that I'm journaling every single day. And I do want to like write down 2 to 3 sentences about how my day was, just because I want to like end the day on a peaceful note. Those are some of the things that I'm working on. I think even today I was listening on a podcast about doing things intentionally. And I think it's important that we do things really with a genuine interest and not because we just want to get to it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I love journaling. I think it's probably one of the most powerful tools you can do, and just writing it down. And I feel like the process of just putting pen to paper makes it so much more real. And it's a reflective exercise as well. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I feel like the listeners will definitely have so much to take away from your advice and your mentorship. And what are the ways that people can reach out to you and connect with you if they want to?
Yes, I do have a LinkedIn profile called Urmi Hossain. I have a podcast called Stories Beyond Borders, which is available on Apple and Spotify. And I do have an Instagram page with the same name, so people can connect with me through that as well. And then I have my YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain, and my book is called Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Intergenerational Struggle, which is available on Amazon.
Perfect. I'll definitely link that in the show notes so people can connect with you. And yeah, I really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, so much for listening to this episode. I think Urmi had such meaningful, insightful things to say, especially her 3 Ps of purpose, passion, and power, and how those build your personal brand, which I guess is the hidden 4th P, and how you can make those subconscious thoughts and beliefs come into reality. And if you really resonated with this, definitely comment below. I read each and every comment. And yeah, definitely follow along for more episodes where we talk more about navigating one's career. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.